Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, May 14th, 2026. I feel like we're getting closer to some sort of Hallmark or NAFTA refrigerator calendar holiday here, but I'm confused and old and lost now that I've been away from home for some time. Everything still just, I guess, coming back into focus, really, the way things are in Kagro in the Morning World headquarters. I'm just not used to it. I've been living in a combination of different hotel rooms for a month now, and I'm confused by, for one thing, bathroom countertops that are anything but white. are like disorienting. And also, I keep coming downstairs in the morning expecting to find a breakfast buffet, and it's not here. And so I'm a little off on all of these things. Plus, of course, recovering from a cold, which I found out this morning from some panicky clickbait stuff. I don't know. I either have hantavirus, of course, as everybody does now. It's very hot. It's one of the hottest diseases in the world now. We made it that way. It used to be nobody had hantavirus, but now everybody's talking about it. It's something yeah, right. He invented hantavirus. It's something he wants to take credit for. But I'm alerted that I have been now in the San Joaquin Valley. So I have valley fever, San Joaquin Valley fever, not Valley Girl fever or anything like that from the 1980s where Donald Trump's brain is still frozen. But, every once in a while, somebody catches something unusual, so the Weather Channel says, you all have it, or you all should look for it, and the symptoms are exactly like something else that you commonly get, and you'll never know the difference. You should just, I guess, panic and ask for a lot of tests. So I assume I have that because, I was in that valley, and the conditions, I guess, were what they were talking about. But the conditions are always that. Dry, dusty, lack of rain, or by the way, it can also be spread by enormous amounts of rainfall. So really, there's nothing you can do. No rain, lots of rain. Doesn't really make a difference. All right, we got to study up on things. It's been a relatively quiet couple of days here because they shipped Trump to China via UPS, apparently, and shut him up in a box, and he didn't speak to the press for the 20-hour flight, which is a little bit unusual. Ordinarily, I'd think he was studying up on some important concepts that he needed to cover with the Chinese leadership, but I know that's not the case. And now we're getting more information about who has gone with him. His entourage as he travels to China. He travels everywhere. He brings, his kids, for one thing. That's it. The calendar tells me it's bring your kids to work day. And that's why Eric Trump, but not Don Jr., I guess, is in China with his dad, along with a lineup of CEOs, which lineup never changes, no matter what country it is he's going to. That's all there is to it. He brings Elon Musk and Tim Apple, who isn't even Tim Apple anymore, I don't think, or he's being replaced by some other Apple person. And, you name it, a lineup of CEOs, which only further cements, I guess, the Chinese idea that we are, in fact, a corporatocracy of some kind. And these are quasi-governmental officials. Maybe they thought they understood our political system, and maybe they understood it better than we did. So anyway, he's traveling with this enormous entourage of CEOs who I guess are there to cut deals on the government dime, which is also fantastic. But by the way, I just want to say, as we'll be touching on this issue as well, compare the size of the entourage he brings with him for a trip like this to the size of the entourage of experts he sends to Iran or to Pakistan to negotiate with Iran over, maybe the nuclear future of the world and, of course, the entire world economy because the Strait of Hormuz is part of this so-called negotiation. And he sends Jared Kushner and Steve what's-his-name to try and work this thing out, and this is why this is dragging on forever. No resolution in sight because we don't even know what we're asking for, and anybody who knows what we should be asking for was left at home, or I guess is on the plane to China. Anyway, so here we are. It is Thursday. We were right that election season is over in the sense of special election season being over, but as Greg reminded us, we're back in primary season, so there is election fallout to sort out. So, there's plenty to do and plenty of stuff to get to. But now I'm thinking, all right, yeah, I'm looking for all of my good fanfares, but I've isolated the good short one that he likes the most. So there's always that, and then I guess I could. This should be a fanfare. This is not a fanfare.
And Dan Balls.
That's always a good one. F and Dan Balls, and it's usually worth playing once in a while. We'll use that as an introduction, unless you'd prefer some sort of longer fanfare, Greg.
No, that works just fine.
All right.
We'll just call it fanfare for the really common man.
Yeah, that's right. This is commonly the fanfare we like to give to that man, F and Dan
right.
Balls.
So I'm glad you mentioned Eric Trump in China.
Yes,
Nixon goes to China and all that.
Yes,
it's an opera. But
that
Nixon
is
on the beach or whatever.
Springtime for Nixon.
Yeah,
I forget what they call
it. Financial Times just has a really nice brief coverage of the trip, which, of course, you won't read in the New York papers because they suck up a little bit too much. But Financial Times just says, Eric Trump joins Beijing deal as family link group chases China deal. Company with ties to U.S. President's son has a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with chipmaker that Congress warned is connected to the Communist Party. That's the headline.
Oh.
So basically, Grifter Eric is in China denying that he's doing anything except being a dutiful, supportive son. But here's what the Financial Times has to say. Eric Trump is joining his father on a state visit to Beijing while a company linked to him and U.S. President's family explores a deal with a Chinese chipmaker American lawmakers have warned is connected to the ruling Communist Party. Las Vegas-based fintech Alt 5 Sigma. What's fintech, you ask? It's financial technology. Yeah, think about it like, okay, you're going to your local indie bookstore, and it's nice weather, so they happen to have a few dozen books outside the store so that you can peruse it as you walk down the avenue.
Yeah.
In your Easter hat. And you find something you like.
I got one. Yeah.
And you want to buy it, so you take out your credit card.
Yeah.
And they swipe the credit card outside. How does that work? Well, it's probably something like a company called Square, which you may have heard of.
Yes.
And the stuff that powers all of that is fintech.
I don't know how I use it, but yeah.
It's financial technology, which allows you to do that stuff.
I don't know why that term makes it sound like it's more complicated than that, but things you encounter every day, or if you think it's really cool that the soda vending machine will take your phone as payment. I mean,
right.
just
or
take your
on the
phone.
Other side, how do
that happens in China.
Companies wind up setting all of this stuff up so they can figure out how much money they're making at any given minute so that they could find out that you could do congestion pricing. You went to that soda machine, you used your phone. Everybody's buying soda. Okay, price just went up 2 cents.
Yeah.
That's all fintech.
These things, okay, well, it's not always a great thing, but sometimes it's nice.
Las Vegas-based fintech Alt 5 Sigma, which has financial links to the Trump family's World Liberty financial crypto business, last month signed a memorandum of understanding with Nano Labs to build data centers in the U.S.
Oh, more. Hooray.
Eric Trump was designated an observer on Alt 5 Sigma's board last year, and
is he getting paid to observe?
Chairman of the board of that company, Alt 5 Sigma, is Zach What's-His-Name, the son of Steve What's-His-Name.
Oh, my God.
President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy.
Yeah.
The name is Witkoff, but nobody really cares.
Right. I do that on purpose. But.
Right. So Alt 5 Sigma and Nano said they would use a 90-day evaluation period to consider more cooperation. And so the fact that, there's a $1 billion deal to be made, a spokesperson for Eric Trump said he was joining the president in his own personal capacity.
Sure.
He will not participate in any discussions or meetings related to any business entity. He lied.
Why go? Right. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
I went so that I wouldn't talk to anybody.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah,
just
why
to
I
be
go-
a
that's why I
dutiful,
go to China.
supportive son, because that's what we do in our family.
Right. Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm there in case he, drops dead. I have first access to the will. Perhaps that's it.
Will, first access to the nuclear football. I will be president.
Oh, right.
So.
Yeah, he may run away with that. I don't know
Because
if
it
he
says it
wants
right
that.
here in his will that I wrote.
Wink. Okay.
Wink, wink. Okay, anyway,
look.
So I just wanted to start with that. Just
What's
I don't
the Chinese
wanna
company?
pretend that it's not happening or that we ignored it. That's what's in the news, and you'll hear all sorts of propaganda about it this morning. Just so you know what's going on.
Nano is the Chinese company. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess Steve Jobs started it.
Oh, and it's now it's connected with them through.
You remember that Saturday
buying
Night
of
Live,
purchases.
iPhone.
Buying that.
When he introduced the Nano, he threw it up in the air, and it was so tiny you couldn't see it.
And so this also clears things up. I thought you said Chinese shipbuilder, like what's his name? Like McConnell's wife is involved in, but you said chip builder.
Yeah.
CH.
Shipbuilder, like the guy who used to own the Yankees. That's what we're talking
really,
about.
honestly, and we think understanding Chinese for diplomatic situations is so difficult. They're, I'm sure, scratching their heads. What's the difference? Ship or chip? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
And, they're laughing at our attempts to pronounce their differences. That's crazy. We should change that. We should change that.
Talk to somebody to Louisiana.
Oh, yeah, right. Forget it.
And see if you can get yourself understood.
Ugh.
And you just have to understand the difference between y'all and all y'all.
Right,
y'all is
true.
singular
Different.
and all y'all's plural. So
you can't
just have to know
possibly
these
mean
things.
that. Okay.
Right. Anyway,
Goodness.
Elections. Yes, as you mentioned, elections happened.
Right.
We covered Nebraska.
We sure did.
I don't think something we covered enough in Nebraska is
there was something we missed?
throw out these terms as if everybody understands them. I'm talking about myself, of course.
I see.
But Nebraska, you know how Louisiana has parishes, and it's like, oh, that's really weird. It's like the only state that has it.
Right, you're crazy.
Nebraska doesn't have a House and Senate. Nebraska has what you call a unicameral
I did throw that out.
legislator.
Yes.
You did.
But I didn't
and
say
we
what
just
it
glossed
meant.
by it and said, I'll look that up later. What the heck
Right.
is he talking about? Well, that's only because, Nebraska's the only one.
Right. It's exciting that way.
It is. And so, in theory, they're like Supreme Court elections in various states. They pretend that it's nonpartisan.
Right, that too. That's not. I forgot. That's a part of it. I mean, it has nothing to do with being unicameral, I guess, unless.
Well, it is because it all happened in the 30s, Dust Bowl era.
Okay.
Money was tight.
Right.
And running a government was expensive.
Right.
And they decided to have nonpartisan unicameral representation because it was the cheapest possible way to keep the state running.
Okay.
So that was
dictatorship.
I'm guessing 1934-ish, something like that.
So they should have gone with the Wizard of Oz to run their government instead.
Yeah, before then they did have bicameral, but now they have unicameral.
This costs too much.
What does that
Get
mean?
rid
And
of
this
the
is why,
House.
and
we should try that.
Here's your little history factoid for the day. So,
I did not know why this was the case, but I did know that it was. But I forgot the part that they're ostensibly nonpartisan.
Right.
But they're, wink, wink, like everywhere else.
Why is that important? Well, again, this is a blue dot election here. We're talking about the fact that in Nebraska, Omaha specifically, we want to set it up such that they can't change the rules and get rid of the one electoral vote that generally goes to the Democrats in the relatively liberal Omaha area to the rest of the state.
Okay, right.
But it turns out enough
is enough.
Not hard right people won their primaries to think that that wouldn't happen anyway. But it certainly happened in the Omaha area, where what was happening is that there was a primary, it was a Democratic primary.
Yeah.
But there was a state senator who was running in the Democratic primary who lost. Had he won, he would have been replaced by the Republican governor, and that might have taken a vote out of the unicameral nonpartisan legislator blocking any moves to try to change that blue dot vote.
Yeah.
Maine could match it depending upon who wins the
They have threatened
there.
that before, haven't they?
And yeah. So there's always been the threat that, well, if Nebraska does it, Maine will just revert to like, no, we're not going to split our vote either, so you can't do that.
Yeah, they get a red dot.
And so that's
Not really a dot.
the nuclear
Large
deterrence
swath.
part of it that mixes into all of this. It's true that all the gloves are off and everybody wants to do maximalist everything, but that's not always happening. Louisiana got one seat, not two, eliminated, so that there's one less black representation in Congress, which is a big deal and continues to be a big deal, whether people talk about it every day.
Two's not enough, but
what with the Voting Rights Act and all of that. Georgia is threatening to do something not for this year, but before 2028, because they're trying to do it before a Democrat becomes governor. There are plenty of states that are Republican-oriented that want to change the rules the way Wisconsin did. Wisconsin is such a study in what happens when people really try to run everything.
Yes.
Back to the Scott Walker days.
Right. Everybody had 8
Eliminate union representation, set it up so that if Walker loses, the next governor won't have any power. If he's a Democrat, we'll just restore it if it's Republican, that kind of thing.
Right.
And what's happening is that, what happened is the people of Wisconsin decided to vote for the more liberal, nonpartisan, but really a Democrat representation on Wisconsin Supreme Court, and that changed everything.
Yes.
And so now all of a sudden, Wisconsin Republicans who had a lock, the trifecta under Scott Walker, are starting to retire in droves because they don't want to have any part of actually having to be in the minority, because everybody hates being in the minority in a legislature.
Yes, which is amazing, because when they win a majority, the thing they do is try to eliminate the other guys from minorities. Never mind the do unto others thing. That's stupid.
Yeah,
we
want to get rid of the minorities in the minority because we want to, make sure this is white supremacist rule, because past isn't even past, as Faulkner used to say.
Oh.
So, and it's just a lesson of what happens when people claim to be nonpartisan but really aren't. And this has been happening for years. Now all of a sudden people are outright saying, well, I really would prefer that the Republicans win. Oh my God, how could this happen? We've never done this. But we do it all the time. We've been doing it for decades.
It's interesting now that we were mentioning the fake nonpartisan thing in Nebraska. Like, if you're running for state office, nonpartisan state office, and you're running on the platform of, when I get there, one of these two parties to which I do not belong, I am going to redistrict the other one out of existence. So
and I'm going to support Donald Trump, who is one of the parties that I don't belong to.
Right, exactly. So, whatever. Nebraska. Maybe this is the reason I didn't go to you, but I would like to try anyway.
So our friend Taniel, who's just so
Omaha.
good at this, summarized something again from the election on Tuesday from a different state. West Virginia.
I was just there too. It's slightly to my west.
Yeah?
And north and south and east somewhat. I did.
You were in West by God, Virginia?
We were in hollers there. By God. By gum. By jinkies. I don't think they say
a big
by
result
jinkies.
yesterday, writes Taniel.
Yeah.
2 Supreme Court justices in West Virginia lost their bids to stay on the bench.
Aha.
After they were appointed by GOP Governor Morrissey, who's a hard right guy, despite heavy support from conservative PACs to help them. They lost. Now, one of the winners is a moderate GOP lawmaker. The other is a longtime local judge with a moderate reputation. These aren't Democratic wins, writes Tamiel, to be clear, but they're also clear losses for conservative groups.
Okay.
So that's part of what happened on Tuesday.
All right. I should have shouted about it louder while I was in Charleston.
Yeah, I suppose.
Okay.
And speaking of elections, as we have been doing, there's a fella named DJ Soak speaking.
Okay.
Has been following very closely the Georgia elections, again, primaries, but we're talking about early votes here. Day 17 of early vote in Georgia, and the ballot choice yesterday, you could vote in the Democratic or the Republican primary.
In Georgia,
Let me tell you the results, and then I'll tell you why it's important.
All right.
Democrat plus 16.8 by ballot choice, and so far that means Democrats are ahead 10.9 points cumulatively. So if you take all the votes so far, 10% more vote, 11% more vote for the Democrats than the Republicans. In 2022, on day 17, so apples to apples,
yeah,
Republicans plus 17 by ballot choice, Republicans plus 15 cumulatively. So that would be a 26-point swing to the Democrats in terms of who's turning out.
Early anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the reason I mention this is because our friend Winwich AMC, John Colvin, who's a Louisiana pollster, Republican pollster, but a straight shooter, very, very interesting and good guy, has made a point of saying that one of the things he always follows as a pollster is who turns out in primaries, because it's a really good indicator of whether there's really a wave or not building.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you look at the Georgia results, they Democrats plus 10.9 cumulatively so far on day 17 this year, compared to day 17 Republicans plus 15 in 2022. That's a big swing to the Democrats, and that fits in with his, okay, watch this, folks, because this is how the wave builds.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned
certainly likely. I guess if the wave were to fail to materialize, I suppose the explanation might be, Republicans have spent the last couple of years convincing their people, the whole early voting and voting by mail and all of those scary things are bad.
Another part of it is you may have a more competitive primary on the Democratic side this year for whatever reason. It may be, but that's not necessarily true in Georgia. But those are all true, and so they may explain. And what you said may explain variances from state to state.
If we get
one. But when you take a look at all of it, and in every single state the Democrats are outperforming, that's what Colvin is talking about.
I think that's largely right. There's certainly, if you had to choose among the two parties, which one of them cannot wait to get the chance to cast a ballot and do something?
Right.
Yeah.
And so his argument goes something along the lines of, you amateurs keep looking at how much Democrats overperform in special elections, but those are low turnout things, so I, the professional, he's not that obnoxious about it.
Okay, that's good.
A good person. I, the professional, look at it in terms of, how many people are turning out, and what does that mean in terms of percentages? And so, percentage-wise, if Democrats are turning out more than Republicans, that covers for the fact that it's a low turnout event. Still, if Democrats are doubling the turnout in a state where Republicans generally elect people, that's telling you something about what's happening here.
Yeah.
And what it's telling you is that annoyed/angry people vote.
Yeah. All right. What we don't know yet is, or do we know, things like, Can you show up as an angry Republican and say, give me one of those Democratic ballots?
Sure. And people say every year, maybe they're getting, but it never really turns out that it's a significant amount.
Oh.
Enough for bragging rights. But not enough to really skew things one way or another.
All right. I mean, sometimes people do it to say, I'm going to screw with those Democrats. But sometimes people say, I can't stand the Republican at the moment. I'm going to switch.
And that brings up another point. People always act as if, or people sometimes act as if, always doesn't fit here. People sometimes act as if the electorate is static.
Yes.
But if you have an election and you're trying to compare it to 2 years ago or 4 years ago, the independents who showed up and vote may not be the same independents that showed up and vote last time. The electorate is changing.
Right, sure.
Older people who tend to support Republicans and perhaps are more conservative, shall we say, are not in a position to vote anymore.
Right, they get hantavirus.
And younger people age in to the candidacy.
They get getting older virus.
So you have these situations where younger people are just like really super duper heavily annoyed with Republicans because you're not allowing me to start a career, start a family. Your economic stuff stinks, and I'm blaming Trump. This, that, and everything else.
Yeah.
So it's a different electorate, and all of that matters. So with that background, I want to tell you about some recent polling.
All right.
CNN came out with a +3 generic ballot for the Democrats. It was +6 in March, and so CNN, who sponsored the CNN poll, spent a lot of time on CNN talking about the CNN poll and saying, gee, we're not really seeing a whole lot of movement here, even though everybody hates Republicans. That must mean something. And they went on to try to explain what it meant. But the problem was that on the very same day, and certainly within a couple of days of each other, we had 3 other polls, including Atlas Intel.
Oh, yes. We heard how highly rated they were yesterday.
Yes. Democrats 55, Republicans 40 on the generic ballot. That's +15.
That's a lot.
And they had something like, if you're looking at the youth vote, like 85-15 Democrats.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Okay. Gabo, Gabo, a B-rated registered voter poll. Democrats 48, Republicans 40, so that would be an 8.1. RMG Research, which tends to lean Republican, Democrats 50, Republicans 41. And in fact, if you take a look at the weighted average for all of these in the accumulation sites, basically Democrats have no worse than a 5-point lead, and sometimes as much as 15. Generally speaking, the opinion is anything 4 or more, Democrats win the House. So keep that in mind when you think about redistricting and all the shenanigans.
Yes,
and
all
the
right.
malarkey.
Good. Yeah, so don't forget the malarkey. There was a tendency to put that behind.
When you think of all that stuff.
It all goes together, and it didn't go away just because Biden did.
Hi, Kagro in the Morning listeners. This is Rebecca Romans, longtime listener and longtime supporter of the show. Do you love your non-corporatized, completely independent, commercial-free Kagro in the Morning show? Do you stand out among the crowd at the office water cooler when discussing current events because of all the up-to-the-minute news you've been brought by David Waldman? Then it's time to give back a little. David relies on contributions from listeners like you and me to keep this show on the air. Patreon.com is among the easiest ways to make secure recurring monthly donations to support the show. Patreon.com/KagroX will bring you straight to his donation page, where you can sign up for any convenient tier you like. A mere $5 a month. You'll never miss it. Works out to about 25 cents a show. That means that David is making 12.5 cents an hour, which, by coincidence, is exactly what the GOP wants to lower the federal minimum wage to. Once again, David is ahead of the curve. If Patreon.com doesn't sound like your kind of thing, there's always PayPal, or even the Square Cash app. Any way you choose to donate, please choose to donate. And thank you on behalf of David and the rest of us listeners. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're back on time and everything, because I was sitting here talking with Greg, as opposed to running around doing brief errands during the breaks later in the show when I get back late and winded. I just had to go to Nebraska, but I'm back now. We're both back. There's more news. We have all sorts of things lined up. I'm just here. I'm just a spectator in this one. What's next, Greg?
Well, so we're going to do a unicameral half hour then, if you're just a spectator.
Yes, that's right.
Right. It won't be a bicameral discussion. It'll be a unicameral discussion.
Right.
This is from Sarah Ferris. She now works for CNN. I think she may have started out at Politico. I don't know Sarah personally. I just know Sarah's family.
Oh.
Because, she's from Newtown.
Oh, so, okay. Yes, right. I thought the Ferris wheel, maybe.
So I always, whenever she has anything out there, it always catches my eye. This was on Twitter. New, Jeffries battle plan for 28, 7+ states, 12+ seats, total war with GOP for Democrats who refuse. Jeffries' allies preparing pressure campaign. Only real Democrats are willing to fight, one person close to Jeffries told us. Basically, They're going to put pressure on people like the state senator in Delaware who didn't want to do redistricting, who's now saying, I'll reconsider.
Oh.
So it isn't just the Republicans that are doing this. The Democrats are not disarming. They're not going to do unilateral disarming.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. Well, interesting. Here in Virginia, everybody's still a little bit upset about, well, what are you going to do after the total war gets defeated by the Supreme Court? Are you going to do some more total war things or not?
With the Supreme Court?
Yeah, not sure. Unclear. But okay, this is interesting. We want to see this happening, and this is something that lots of rank and file Democrats were probably thinking, nah, Jeffries really isn't going to endorse doing this. He's a moderate institutionalist at heart.
Jeffries, Schumer, they're the same. Ladies and gentlemen, they are not the same.
Okay. Well, it's good to see.
One's in the House and the other's in the Senate. Secondly, they're different people.
We're trying not to turn
them
into each other.
They're not the same.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm excited about the prospect. Let's see it play out.
Yeah, we'll see how it works. And so in that regard, there was this fascinating piece in the Bulwark, which was published May 14th, why that would be today, by a fellow named Rob Flaherty.
These are not Democrats, Bulwark.
This is a Democrat.
Oh, okay.
And he says, here's what I told the DNC autopsy. The report may never see the light of day, so the Harris campaign's head of digital offers his candid breakdown of what worked, what failed, and what Democrats have yet to learn.
All right.
And it's a really interesting story. Politics is nothing without stories.
It's certainly a lot less.
Our podcast wouldn't be, because you have to make it interesting.
Shorter.
What makes it interesting? Well, there's a story around it.
Oh. Interesting.
So
Let me write that down. Interesting. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, try to make podcast interesting.
I knew there was an element missing to
Why
this.
didn't you tell me this 10 years ago when we first started to do this? You may have heard about the Democratic National Committee autopsy, in scare quotes.
I haven't.
The post-election report commissioned by the DNC in 2025 to examine what went wrong in the 2024 campaign. And you may have heard it was never released to the public. And people are mad at Ken Martin, and people are mad at Jamie Harrison, and because of that, there's been, he writes, there's a lot of rightful concern among Democrats about there not being an honest accounting, but there are a few people who have insight into what the autopsy report actually says and can share what they know of it, and I'm one of them.
Oh, no.
Why?
Here we go.
Because, to shorten it, I was part of the campaign, the winning one with Biden and the losing one with Harris. And I was interviewed by the autopsy team. Now, to be clear, I haven't seen the autopsy report. I understood they would release the autopsy. They never did. It seemed odd that they were doing it so late, September 2025, a year later. But I played ball for two reasons. It's important to look backwards, and the digital components of a campaign are usually misunderstood. But the autopsy never went out. And here's one of the interesting things he has to say.
I don't think they often do. But okay.
My understanding, based on Democratic world hearsay, is the truth is stupider than fiction.
Well, that's likely true.
No autopsy released because there isn't one. The members of the, quote, autopsy team, end quote, were in over their heads. They struggled to put the thing together. What they produced was a loose summary of a bunch of interviews, and basically it wasn't worth doing. They didn't talk to the campaign very much, except for me. They didn't talk to big spenders. And the more interesting question is, what would an actual autopsy of the 2024 campaign have said, understated here, or unstated, is if they had actually done it correctly.
Yeah. What would it have said?
Well, he says, one overarching takeaway in the Biden 2020 campaign, which we won, and the Biden-Harris 2024 campaign, which we lost, is that results don't define what lessons you can draw from a campaign. We screwed up a lot of things in 20, but won. We did a lot of things right in 24, but lost. Some folks might yell at me for this, but I think in 24 we ran a good, not perfect, campaign that was stuck in a hole we couldn't get out of. The average shift towards Trump was significantly lower in the states where we competed, but you don't get a medal for average shift being significantly lower. We lost, and we should learn lessons from it. So no autopsy is going to show a smoking gun. There's too many confounding variables. But I'll break it down into 3 parts. What happened, how it happened, and what happens now.
All right.
And remember, this is just one guy's opinion.
Right.
But it's better than the autopsy that you never saw because it doesn't exist.
That was no guy's opinions.
Yeah. Part 1. What happened? You have to have a brand. We didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Biggest lesson. Tactics don't add up to a brand, and a brand is the most important thing in politics today. People often think of a campaign's brand as visual, like the logo, but no, it's a story of why the candidate got in the race. The why is critical, and we couldn't articulate it.
Yes, you were restricted, really. I mean, just out of sheer propriety, the man was still president.
Yeah. We were reaching the people we wanted to reach, according to our data, but something bigger wasn't gelling. It wasn't just us. Incumbents around the world were getting croaked. Labour's honeymoon in the UK lasted about 12 seconds. We underestimated then, and are underestimating now, just how disillusioned people are. There was in us a pervasive sense that nothing works. The institutions holding us has failed. Thank you, Supreme Court. That's a lot of the reason why people think that. Media, government, business, nobody trusts anybody anymore. Thank you, Supreme Court. You're a lot of the reason why that's true. For reasons both of Democrats' own making and from simply being incumbents, the Democratic brand sucked. In the face of that massive cultural shift towards skepticism and distrust, and some holes Democrats dug for ourselves, we hit the limit of what campaign tactics can do. We say this all the time in war and other places. Tactics won't win a war. Strategy has to win a war. Strategy is your brand.
Okay.
Right? So you have to put together, here's why we're running. Biden was running because he's a decent guy who wants to restore decency. It worked in 2020.
Yeah.
What was Harris's brand? Why was she running?
Well, right.
To replace Biden. Well, that really wasn't good enough. Everybody was mad at Biden and the Democrats because inflation was out of control.
That's not even her fault. It's like I wasn't planning on it doing is I was going to run again as vice president and then spend the next 4 years building a brand.
Right, exactly. But, she was thrust in circumstances not of her control, but it still worked out to, she couldn't run on Biden's brand.
Right. Everyone was
I'm running
at
because
it.
Biden was a decent guy who now, for reasons that I can't mention on air, this is a family show.
Right.
I'm running.
Yep.
That's
that's very you have to be out there winking at people. I'm running because of how awesome Biden is right now. He just isn't running because
so he goes on to say, we all knew Biden's age was his worst negative. At 81, he was the oldest sitting president, but his age was more than a number. It mattered tactically. It was harder for him to communicate clearly, which eroded trust in his leadership. But the worst damage was to the perception that Biden could connect with people's lives and be trusted to deliver. Even at the beginning, focus groups showed clearly the problem wasn't that Biden was perceived to be senile. It said he was perceived to be too old to understand what voters were going through. Why do I say that? Because as I told you on the show yesterday, John Larson at 77, a solidly liberal working representative for the state of Connecticut, lost his endorsement, not the primary, his endorsement from the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party wanted to go with somebody younger and perceived as more vigorous. Think Maine.
Okay.
So what he's saying here is that was present in 2024, not just in 2026. The perceptions around age took away Biden's reputational superpower, which is empathy. The thing that kept him in the Senate for 36 years and got him on the ticket in 2008 and made him president in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, he is good at that.
Yeah, but not if you're too old to understand what I'm going through right now.
Either that or at least too old to make it clear that you do, even if you do understand it. I can't tell you effectively.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I should look this up, but I don't know. So you probably told me yesterday who got Larson's seat endorsement.
It's the ex-mayor of Hartford.
Yeah. Was Larson at the convention and the...
Yes.
Okay.
He was at the convention.
That's interesting,
he was
too.
lobbying, and he lost anyway.
All right. Because that sometimes helps explain things, too. Is like, well, guess who they nominated? The guy who was actually there at the convention. Well, that's interesting.
Right.
And the guy who skipped it didn't get nominated. But now they're both there. All right. Just a side note. Didn't mean to derail it, but where were we? Yes, right. The brand sucked. And the autopsy. That was it.
Right. So, again, all of that is important. All of that is interesting. Now, throughout the campaign, he says, there's a disconnect between what people are hearing from us and about us in earned and organic media and what we were saying in paid media.
Mm-hmm.
Earned media is when you say something that makes TV news cover you. Organic media is what happens on social media when they decide on their own to talk about you or not talk about you.
Okay.
And paid media are your commercials. And the stupid commercials and the little ads that annoy people on Facebook are not where it's at. You got to win in organic media if you can. Earned media second, paid media last. My opinion. Online and at events, the campaign came to be freedom and brat girl summer, and much of that happened organically. And you can tell from a video we give you as an example, it could combine our economic and anti-authoritarian arguments and had its fans, but in the long run, I don't know if that was really where we needed to be. My side lost the internal debate after David Axelrod panned the spot as base mobilization on an episode of Hacks on Tap. We moved on from using it. It's hard not to look at the success of an affordability message in the time since the campaign and wonder what would have been if we had just focused on that.
Yeah.
But would have been convincing. The economy was what it was, and Harris was the sitting vice president.
Right. What about the weird thing? Like, stop calling them weird. Talk about that at all?
Yeah, Tim Walz's greatest superpower was that he would say things like, these people are weird.
Right. But and then it was suppressed to some extent, but I don't know whether that got autopsy treatment. Maybe this is his focus. We only know this because they didn't release the autopsy because there wasn't one. Right.
It's an interesting sidelight. Ted Turner died, and we didn't cover that a whole lot.
That's right.
But when people were listing all of the things that he did, and he did a lot of stuff. Not just start CNN, not just win the America's Cup, not just married various and sundry people, including Jane Fonda, who talked him into donating $1 billion to various and sundry charities instead of running for president. Good for you, Jane.
Well, she headed him off the
money was much better spent than established Ted Turner's reputation as a philanthropist, not a philanderer. That was a separate thing. But the point is, those like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who knew him best and actually interviewed people who knew him best, always came down to mentioning somebody said, when you get down to it, the dude was weird.
Well, yeah, people freed from the normal bounds of society by enormous amounts of money are weird. They get weird if they haven't started that way.
But weird works. It's great messaging, to get back to this autopsy. And you mentioned it because it took away from Tim Walz's messaging.
Yeah.
Because it was too buttoned down and all of that. Anyway, so this guy goes out to say, Rob Flaherty, this is where having only 107 days to put out a plan together hurt us. We got pulled all over the place dealing with subplots. Trump's negatives were not going down. There were other issues on which we were advertising. Given our positive message, it wasn't quite focused, and negative message, it was difficult to digest, which is to say not working. It was easy for the other side to define Harris. The digital team owns this, and I own this as much as anybody else. A brand is a story about who you are and what you believe, that everything else, the ads, the organic content, the creator appearances, the surrogates, the influencers, if you want. The Trump campaign understood this intuitively. Everything they did pointed at one narrative. We kept punching in different directions. The lessons from next times, there needs to be a direct pipeline between what's working and what goes unpaid, and vice versa. If your organic content and earned media are telling one story and your paid content is telling something else, you don't have a messaging problem, you have a brand problem. No amount of ad testing can fix that. And mentions Joe Rogan, the battle for attention, the HQ accounts, Biden HQ and Kamala HQ social media accounts were a big success, but I often hear that the Kamala account turned off men, or that they should have used the account to persuade. I'm not so sure. What? Because an organic campaign aimed at reaching young men wouldn't use Kamala HQ or K-Hive or any of that stuff. The issue is that digital messaging can't solve deeper problems. Having the social accounts stick to just persuasion would have meant they didn't resonate with the people they needed to get fired up.
True,
and
also.
A more man-heavy brand, whatever that means, would have felt weird and out of place.
Yeah.
Kamala.
Yeah. Yes, true.
Right? And then he goes on to say, again, one of the interesting things. What about Gaza?
Yes, that was a thing.
Given the Biden administration's position, Gaza was an impossible issue to communicate around. Protesters drove coverage. And again, you know my long-standing feeling about this. I disrespect the protesters because they only protested against Democrats. I will never forgive them for that.
I will ask you again next week.
Yeah.
See if you've forgiven them.
Well, I changed my mind. Digital creators or even supporters were afraid to say anything nice about Biden because their comment sections would get rocked. For many voters watching the horrific, painful footage out of Gaza, it became a moral question. We spent the entire election with a giant rotting fish around our necks, said somebody from the campaign. And this is one of the places where Biden era, not his age, but his era, led him to misread politics. His frustration with Netanyahu was well covered and spilled out in the public, but he just misread the room. He saw support for Israel as an endless fixed object because that's the era he grew up in, and missed how much the ongoing visuals were seeping into the public consciousness. And you're seeing the politics move today, which you are. So I thought that was pretty insightful.
Yes, that absolutely needed to be mentioned, and that was a major part of it. Huge, and that's true. And we had that around our necks in a way that Republicans didn't, because Republicans were perfectly comfortable with, I don't really care what happens there, for one thing. And I also, my attachment
on the other hand, the protests are only about
the
Democrats, so
so I don't need
to interfere
respond
when your opponent is
right. And right when they say when your opponent's drowning, throw them an anchor. Well, if they're drowning because there's already an anchor around their neck, you don't even have to throw them anything.
Right. Another point he made, and again, this is one guy's opinion. It's not the official autopsy, but I think it's probably better than anything you would have read from a committee.
Okay. Well, it's usually better than committee work.
A camel is a horse built by a committee.
Right.
The people of Wilmington, Delaware were kind and very welcoming. It's clean. Well, it's well maintained. It's close to a lot of stuff. It made sense for Biden to have his campaign headquarters there. But no, we're reaching the end of destination headquarters. COVID changed the way young people work. It changed the way people think. We didn't have to have a headquarters in Wilmington.
Okay.
We couldn't hire. There was no presence. There was no infrastructure. It would have made a whole lot more sense to have it in Philadelphia or, someplace, maybe Detroit, someplace where we actually, like you pick conventions. We want to highlight this swing state that we want to win. We should have done that. We didn't do that.
That is a very niche point that probably nobody else thought about because we're not working on the campaign. But yeah, that does make some sense. I don't know how much of an influence it had and things.
I mean, what kind of organic coverage are you going to get from Wilmington?
Yeah, right.
I've been to Wilmington. Coverage. It's a lovely city. I really like it. It's comfortable, but at this end, there's a lot of museums and rich people's estates that are now public gardens that you can go visit and so on and so forth. But it's not a hub of existing hiring, and it's not a magnet for any future hiring. I could see where, when it was Biden, he already had his cadre and machine, and it didn't really matter necessarily where he put it, but the fact that he put it at home where he, was an institution unto himself, sure, fine. But, all right, yeah, that's interesting. How do you get the best talent to say? It's tough to make them relocate for 6 months to a year to anywhere in particular, but if could it have been in L.A.? Yeah, but
would that
then
have been easier?
But then it was Biden to Harris. You could have moved it to L.A. at that point.
Right.
They didn't.
Yeah. Oh, well.
But again, they only had 100 some odd days.
Right.
So,
you lose all
how did it happen, he says. Somebody who once held a job similar to mine told me the list of things you'll want to do is infinite. There'll always be things you'll want to get done, but we'll miss out on because it just is not enough time.
Mm-hmm.
And
the longest elections in the world, and yet still, yeah.
In both 2020 and 2024. And we've said this in different ways. What's the most valuable commodity for a candidate? Remember this one?
No.
His time.
Time. I remember. Yeah, it took me a little time to remember. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And in the legislature as well, right? Yeah. Okay.
So in both 2020 and 2024, we had the theory of the case about the internet close to right. In 24, we had a harder time executing it, and part of that was we had to switch from the Biden-era campaign, which was begging people to volunteer with us, to the Harris campaign, where we were being stampeded with energy.
Okay.
Again, Brat Summer and all that sort of stuff. It was true. People were very excited about the whole thing was a fiasco. It was a debacle. It was FUBAR. But once they made the switch, the energy around Harris, at least, that little bump you get, they had to deal with that. That's what he's talking about here.
Okay. It's a good problem, but it's
advertising works as long as you do it like it's 2026. That's my hottest take, he says. You can always tell when a TV consultant has made an organic social video. It's slick and overproduced. There are little words on the screen with little whooshes. Sure, some people will watch it because you paid it, but they'll watch it like the guy in A Clockwork Orange with his eyes pried open. It won't work.
Yeah.
Most political ads suck. They're not fun to watch. They're not interesting. They don't use the medium very well. They're blunt instruments, and in the sea of 8 hours of content people watch per day, they blend in. We need ads. We just need to do them better. I'm thinking about ads that really stand out. Of course, there's the negative ads, or the ones that stand out in a negative way.
Oh, yeah.
I am not a witch,
Right? Yeah.
Demon sheep. You remember those from Best and
Gather Your Armies,
or even in Virginia, caravans. There's stuff that they did that didn't work.
Right.
There's stuff that does work. Any Pete Buttigieg ad, right? Rob Sands in Iowa right now, James Tallarico. Their ads work because they're centered around who they are. They're centered around their brand. Isn't me talking about him.
I get you.
And so, you can reinforce that. Same thing with Plattner. Like it or not.
I haven't seen most of the ads there, but yeah, that could be the case. It seems to have worked, so yeah, I assume so.
A lot of Democratic donors, he says, and strategists are growing increasingly skeptical of the effectiveness of ads and are shifting towards organic tactics like clippers and unbranded TikTok accounts. But the fact is, the places we advertised ended up with smaller overall political shifts than the places we didn't, which is pretty instructive. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. The places we advertised ended up with smaller political shifts than the places we didn't. In other words, the places where they intervened, Harris lost by less than the places they didn't do anything.
Okay, right, sure.
So he's saying, well, some of the stuff, therefore, that we did must have helped because, again, that's not good enough. We lost, but that is what happened. The way of the future is realizing that paid and organic are different columns, but must work in tandem to build a brand. Maybe the process should flip the standard one, see what works on social media, and then put that through a persuasion layer rather than the other way around. And that makes sense.
Yes. Right.
These days.
Yeah. It's, any change is a risk, of course, but also, just institutionally, the people you tend to hire on to do the campaign strategy are from the camp that works the other way.
But it's simple stuff, you'd think, right? Let's say Joe Rogan and Stephen Colbert and the night shows, Jimmy and all those guys are talking about one thing. And then you've got advertising that says something else that's over slick and nobody's paying attention.
Yeah.
What if your paid medium actually matched what's being said on those other organic places? Then they mesh, and that's good for you. But that that makes sense.
I think that would have
but the
resulted
funny thing is,
in
that's not what they do.
That could have resulted, I guess I should say, in freeing up the weird attack. It was.
So he says,
working.
for example, in 2022, the typical Senate campaign spent 70% of its budget on linear television and 30% on everything else, and that makes absolutely no sense these days. There are some folks who have said we lost in 2024 because we spent too much time of our advertising on digital, but you could just as easily say we lost because we didn't spend enough. The fact is we lost, so, whatever you're going to say is you think is right, but that's not necessarily true.
Yes, right. But the argument that we lost by less where they tried this, I guess, is what's supposed to be convincing.
Right. Now, there's a lot of people who make their money by selling TV ads, and most of the arguments they make for not spending on digital do not pass the "is there any normal voter who only watches television" test.
Right.
The campaign spent a lot of money on special ads for this precise reason, and it was the right choice. And the New York Times, right after the election, ran an article for which I was interviewed that included some criticism of our campaign's media buying, suggesting it was inefficient and Trump leveraged list matching to target folks more efficiently, but in reality, our targets were different than theirs. Many were geographically clustered. Zip code targeting was more efficient. We used digital as a broadcast tool. Going forward, I'd recommend digital ads be considered the purview of one integrated paid media team. You need a structure where digital doesn't get eaten alive by the incentives of TV media. And I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm online.
Yes, true. That's true. That's true too. Yeah, and I kind of, that's my inelegant way of saying it was better said there, but I too am online.
And then goes on to say, which I think is true, digital presence is a direct reflection of a candidate's brand. It's how voters come to understand who a candidate is. And for this to work, the candidate needs to be actively engaged in the planning and execution of the social media presence. If they're not, it won't work. This isn't a specific criticism of Harris or Biden. But again, I think we're talking about generational change here, and he uses AOC as an example, Beto O'Rourke. They know what I'm talking about here, and it works.
Yes, although their jobs and their campaigns, I think, free them to be involved in that in ways that a presidential campaign would not permit.
Right, although Beto has run for various and sundry things at a higher level than just spokesperson. And what is he doing now? Yeah. Right. Well, but again, you have to take the right lessons even when you lose. Oh, all right. Because you can do everything right or things more right than people realize and lose anyway. Yes. He lost in Texas. Right. That is true. That's only because that's where he ran. Yeah, but, Texas is a hard state for a Democrat. It is. That's true. And I don't know that the lessons of a Texas race are always universally applicable. He may well have won in another state with the same tactics. That is true. Yeah, right. I don't know. AOC, I think, always a special case, certainly. I'm slowing down because it's 9:58, so yeah. At some point we'll. At some point, I think right now but it's at 30 seconds where I'm supposed to hit the button. It's not often when I hit the button, but it's when I'm supposed to. Yeah. There must be a way to automate this. And I don't know. It's just my internal clock speaking here. You can ignore it. Right. Okay. No problem. Well, thank you for hanging on until the end of your internal clock's patience. But there's a lot to do. It's an excellent article. There's even more to it. I think it's worth reading. I like it. I will see you on Monday. Okay. Thanks very much. I appreciate your bringing it to us. See you then. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, side note, behind the scenes production note. As we were running through the 1 minute break, Greg let me know that he got a note via the social media network that we don't like to talk about anymore. And shall we say here, it's from a friend who posts under the handle of investment. Well, that's an interesting choice too, by the way. What does he do for a living? I'm just curious. But anyway, the message was about who's listening to the show and saying the messaging, here's a good suggestion for how you brand, right? We want, Democrats say, we want to help you. The other guys say, we want to F you. And that's about it. That's certainly where we land on what their message ought to be. And I did think, well, now, had we rolled that out as messaging, or had we let the Tim Walz type of messaging bring us there, perhaps. I don't know that he would have gone quite that far, but he might have. He was a willing participant in all of this and seemed to have the finger on the pulse there. And, by the way, I cleaned up the message a little bit, even though I enjoyed very much on the road not cleaning up those messages. But I bet that would result in a lot more early excitement and give me one of those Democratic ballots in a primary right now that the analysts would be saying, it looks like there's a 15-point swing in who's asking for ballots early. The people who can't wait to vote and get on record, and who, by the way, say, it doesn't matter what happens between now and Election Day. Nothing's going to change my mind about this. And I'm going to come back in November to double down on this vote. They're asking for the Democratic ballots. And I wonder, the institutionalists would say, of course, if we say that, my goodness, all the
the delicate sensibilities will have been offended and they'll run away. But the delicate sensibilities people were waiting for Republican ballots. Everybody else is saying, that's right. That's exactly how I feel. Give me one of those ballots. So probably true. And I'll bet investment has been lucrative for that guy, investment. So, all right. Well, that's, I like the feedback. It's great to have that happening at all times. So I definitely appreciate that. I like that story, that article. I thought usually the autopsies are rarely all they're cracked up to be. So maybe it's better that the autopsy doesn't come out. And it seems to me like the trend in autopsies, no matter which party is doing it, is that they don't end up releasing them. I used to think that it was because they were damaging or unflattering to the party brand. Increasingly, I think it may be that they are poorly written and inconclusive, and they just say, well, let's not release that thing instead. But for post-autopsy criticism, that was one of the better ones that I've read, just in terms of being straightforward. This is where I'm coming from. I understand that may bias my viewpoint, but here are the things that I told them, and much less about criticism of what happened last time and how he would totally have fixed it, and more about, hey, these are things that we ought to be thinking about. I might be right, I might not be right, but here's why I think I'm right. And that's the kind of information you want when you're trying to decide which direction to go next. But, becoming a lost skill. The idea of digesting all of that information and writing it correctly into an analysis that everybody can draw a lesson from, that's tough. They may have tried to write the autopsy using AI, and that's why it was so bad and they didn't release it. It's a possibility. Whew, all right. Well, let's see. It occurs to me that I put aside something as I try to think of what I can segue to from there. I think, where did we go here? I socked away from The Atlantic, an interesting article which I may or may not be able to open in its entirety, but this from Tom Nichols, who is not always everybody's favorite to hear from, but I thought an interesting view of another document that is ordinarily issued somewhere along the line, and was apparently so poorly written that it deserves dismissal out of hand. Plus, we can all agree that it is garbage because the document comes from out of the office ostensibly run in the Trump administration by the odious, horrific a-hole Sebastian Gorka, who I think is maybe one of the few people in the Trump administration where, if I can find it, we actually have a sound effect for personally. But where is it? I've lost that dreadful Hungarian sound bite from My Fair Lady. But it's there somewhere. We don't have too many pages of sound here. And this used to be set aside. There we are.
That dreadful Hungarian?
Yes, that's the guy we're talking about. Sebastian Gorka. He's really awful. And also stupid, which is amazing because, of course, he's one of those guys who considers himself at all times the smartest guy in the room, unless Donald Trump is in the room, in which case he's contractually obligated to consider Donald Trump the smartest guy in the room. And he's smarmy and gross and racist and a filthy liar, if I may say so. And he's in charge of counterterrorism. And what better time to be in charge of counterterrorism than during a war with Iran? And in addition to all the things wrong with him personally, he is professionally buffoonish and stupid, and Tom Nichols doesn't fear saying so. But what he does fear is people not knowing how dumb and irresponsible the person in charge of counterterrorism actually is, and that's worrisome. So again, in The Atlantic, the article is titled "The Trump Counterterrorism Strategy: makes America more vulnerable. Always a bad sign. But in particular, he's criticizing the strategy document itself, which is something that counterterrorism offices are meant to be publishing. And I'll let him describe it himself in his piece. The subheader reads, "The policy is unfocused, run by amateurs," and that's the serious problem, "and concerned more with the president's many grievances than with the security of the United States." And isn't that interesting? Because the economic policy of the United States is also concerned more with the president's many grievances than with the economy of the United States. His military policy is concerned more with the president's many grievances than the military of the United States. And guess what? If you continue on down this line, you might guess where this is going. The president's environmental policy is concerned more with the president's many grievances than the environment of the United States. The president's education policy is concerned more with the president's many grievances than with the education in the United States. And so on and so on and so on. But we're focusing on this one. I need to jump back to Instapaper in order to get it because, of course, the link very generously passed around on social media with a gift link, but The Atlantic is one of the places that says the gift is short-lived. You've seen it once, you'll never see it again. And that's why I don't feel terribly guilty about going back to Instapaper and reading it regardless. I know that they require support financially in order to keep operating, and that I shouldn't look a gift link in the mouth, but I do. So here we go. Last week, the Trump administration released the official 2026 United States Counterterrorism Strategy. There's a link to the PDF of this thing if you want to view it for yourself. But the point of the article is that you ought to be less interested in viewing it for strategy than criticism. So we'll stick with the article. All right, the document itself. The document is a mess, replete with typos, hyperbolic assertions, and an obsession with former President Joe Biden. Like, holy cow, counter-terrorists, get over it. It's time for you to focus on the job. But nope, once again, this is what they mean by being too focused on the president's many grievances rather than counterterrorism. Like, there's a real job to do here and real people's lives hang in the balance, but you're angry at lying Joe Biden, rar, yargle, bargle. So don't spend time on that. Look forward, not backward, in counterterrorism world. The bigger problem, however, can you believe this? There's a bigger one, is that it's not an actual strategy. It's more of a long set of notes for a campaign speech, a repackaging, like every policy, so-called policy in the Trump administration. It is a repackaging of President Trump's various preoccupations and prejudices that frames everything the administration doesn't like as, quote, terrorism, and any actions it has already taken as, quote, counterterrorism. Right. So to the extent that the document needs to show what terrorism is and how they're fighting it, rather than having, since they don't have any actual credentials to talk about, they simply say terrorism is stuff we don't like, and since all we do is fight against stuff we don't like, or the president doesn't like, whatever his many grievances are, we'll jawbone about them. So what is terrorism? Stuff that makes the president mad. What is counterterrorism? Jawboning about what makes the president mad. That is just redefining the task so that it makes it, I guess in their minds, it makes it look like they're actually doing something. But for the rest of us who actually know what terrorism, generally speaking, really is and how to combat it, being something other than AI slop meme videos showing the president crapping on those things, that's not really, like, to the people hiding out in various, caves in the Middle East whose only obsession is attacking and killing Americans and damaging American interests around the world, doing anything differently because, oh my God, the president just pooped on us in a video. I'm not going out there and committing an act of terrorism, or maybe it means I'm doing more, or it certainly should mean I'm doing nothing different. I don't care. I didn't see it, and if you show it to me, I'll ignore it. But, all right, whatever. That's the problem. That's what's going on here. And that, I guess it would be a unique and interesting problem that they would have to contend with anyway in the Trump administration, just given who Trump is. If they had smart, capable people, it would be more embarrassing. Smart, capable people who instead, who understood the game and would occasionally prostrate themselves and do the embarrassing Trump bootlicking thing in order to then sneak by solid strategy documents. But that's not what's happening here. Instead, Trump's greatest weakness is that he puts people in jobs that are supposed to do things that are substantive, who are the most subservient to him. And you can't really both be among the most subservient to him and a smart person who's, got hidden talents. There's just no amount of bootlicking that you can do that will hide the fact that you're an actual smart person expert, because he also hates smart person experts. So you got to start out dumb in order to leave enough room for the bootlicking in order to get, where you're going to be handed the reins of something like a counterterrorism task force. Okay, so back to Tom Nichols' take on it, because he's actually organized his thoughts about it and probably proofread them, whereas I'm just going on the fly. As the security expert and Atlantic contributor Juliet Kayyem told me, Tom Nichols, such reports, the counterterrorism strategy reports, used to be serious documents meant to, quote, guide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies, as well as inform, quote, the citizenry, including state and local leaders. This report, unfortunately, is anything but serious, and good luck to anyone trying to make sense of it. But someone has to figure it out, because it is still an official product of the United States government. They printed it on that kind of paper, so we're stuck with it. And it's still supposed to serve as a guide to policy. With that in mind, I read the report. It is mercifully short, right? It's not a serious document, so they might as well just not spend very much time on it. And I offer here a few samples of what readers are up against in trying to understand it. Okay. Is this, this must be a quote from it. I'm again, reading from Instapaper where the formatting comes across differently. But I guess a quote from the strategy document. The fact pattern under the Biden administration was clear. What is that fact pattern? In their view, individuals at the highest level of the U.S. government used their significant powers to politically target individuals in the interest of those they favored, wanted to keep in power, or help win elections. Well, I mean, that's just a restatement of Trump's campaign trail grievance. Deep state stuff, though they didn't use the word deep state, and I'm sure they got dinged for that. But, there's your hyperbolic language. And, of course, every Republican accusation being a confession, you can see what the problem is right away. So I don't know why they spend time on it in this report, but they do. Under the Biden administration, individuals at the highest levels of U.S. government use their significant powers to politically target individuals like James Comey in the interest of those they favored, wanted to keep in power, or to help win elections. You're not supposed to be doing that. That's true. But then again, they weren't, and you are. But I got to put it in the report. This, of course, Tom says, is an old Trump accusation, but now it sounds a lot like projection, and the administration goes after its perceived enemies and tries to undermine America's electoral processes. Next quote here from the document: jihadi terrorists have continued to plot against and kill Americans. That's probably true, actually, in part because of the failed forever war policies of prior Republican administrations. the empowerment of terrorist-sponsoring regimes like Iran under Democrat administrations. Empowerment? What? And a past unwillingness to challenge Islamist ideologies head-on. So much for the Forever War aversion. We're now in our next version of the Forever War. Now, Tom continues, as Homer Simpson would say, everyone is stupid except me. Previous administrations did, in fact, devote significant efforts to countering violent extremism, including a program called, oddly enough, Countering Violent Extremism. What do you know? They even had a document. Back to this new document. America's new U.S. counterterrorism strategy is driven by the principle that America is our homeland. Yes, good. Tom's comment on that, by the way, is glad we've cleared that up. Yeah, that's some principle. America is our homeland. And, I mean, if you want it to be, and we'll defend it using whatever means necessary, if you want to say it that way, just go ahead and say it, I guess, but you didn't. America's counterterrorism strategy is America's our homeland. Yeah, and we're going to allow it to be destroyed, or we're not going to allow it to be destroyed, or we're going to try a little bit to not have it destroyed. What's the strategy? That's missing from your statement. The report lists the threat of Islamist terrorism as a top concern, which is fair enough. The other two threats identified in the report, however, make less sense, you could say. One is narco-terrorists and transnational gangs, an obvious attempt to reverse engineer a justification for Trump's boat attacks off the shores of Latin America so that the attacks, are not crimes themselves, but part of a strategy. That's certainly true. The third category is made up of, ready for this? Violent left-wing extremists, including anarchists and anti-fascists. Who could these be? Communists, perhaps? Not quite. The document identified them as, quote, anti-American, radically pro-transgender, and anarchist. Yeah, that was everybody's chief concern in protesting ICE kidnappings. Transgender issues. That just wasn't top of mind for most of the people protesting. That may have been part of the things they spent their day thinking about, and maybe one of the most important things to them personally, but that wasn't what was going on. But of course, they need that. That's required to state in a document like this, because that's where Trump's brain goes. Why are you building a ballroom? Why is the price now $1 billion when it used to be $100 million? Something radical transgender budget, and we got to pass the Save America Act, which is about voting and restricting access to that. But also, I demand that it also have something about men and women's sports. That's so bad, we can't have it. All right, we'll just put that into the counterterrorism strategy too. No, don't. It's bad. It's a waste of time and a distraction from what you're supposed to be doing, and an indication that you don't actually know what you're supposed to be doing and haven't done it, even though there are words on paper now with a cover that says this is the strategy. That doesn't make it the strategy. There has to be strategy in it in order for it to be true. Otherwise, people will just say, you took the strategy cover and you put it on a campaign speech or something else. You made a mistake here. There was an error at the Kinko's, right? Fix this. But no, this is intentional. All right, so the third category of people that we got to watch out for are violent left-wing extremists, including anarchists and anti-fascists. The document identified them as anti-American, radically pro-transgender, and anarchist, and promises to, this is the part where it gets bad, promises to, quote, map them at home, identify their membership, map their ties to international organizations like Antifa, so good luck with that one, and use law enforcement tools to cripple them operationally before they can maim or kill the innocent. I mean, that's certainly stopping people before they can maim and kill the innocent is certainly what counter-terrorist organizations ought to be doing. The problem is that none of the people they're targeting are maiming or killing the innocent. But of course, they, in reality, actually say that they believe that that's happening, and they may even believe it when they say they believe it, which explains why every time that there's a mass shooting, the right wing goes nuts trying to pretend that the person who did it was either transgender or knew someone who was transgender or was in the same state recently as someone who was transgender previously, passed through on their way to say something offensive to a Republican in another state, whatever the connection may be. They do keep trying to do this, and everybody's kind of the rest of America is confused as to why they're even referencing transgender issues in that setting. But they maintain that they're making sense in doing it, and it's not a one-off thing. It's apparently now, even though it was really just a mistake at Kinko's, it's now the official counterterrorism strategy of the United States, which only means that the rest of the world, in addition to stopping, refraining now from looking to us for leadership in public health issues like hantavirus, because we've withdrawn from the World Health Organization and we have a crazy idiot as Health and Human Services Secretary, and have embarked on a worldwide strategy of portraying America as unreliable and untrustworthy on matters of public health. We now are also, and I can't see how this would cause any harm, unreliable as partners in identifying, analyzing, and combating terrorism around the world, which is weird because we declared a global war on terrorism and it isn't over, and we corralled everybody else into fighting the thing, and now nobody knows what we're doing or why we're doing it, and they're just happy to look elsewhere. So, they're finding alternatives among themselves, and let's talk separately and just leave the Americans out of it. There's something else I need to move to on that front too, and I got to make a note to myself to try to remember what my segue will be here. But keep in mind, even if I never get to it for another day or so, the idea of the rest of the world moving on from feeling compelled to consult with or draw inspiration or analysis from the United States as a global leader. Not happening anymore in any area. As far as I know, there may be one or two things in which we're still watching that, and it might just be bribing the president, perhaps. American corporate CEOs are going on all these overseas trips, perhaps with instructions to the companies and financial entities in other countries that they're visiting with a guidebook on how to bribe them. They may think that they need to disguise their efforts, and I guess the corporate CEOs, American corporate CEOs, are there to say, no, you used to have to disguise your efforts. You don't anymore, and the more obvious they are, the better. You should just give them a gold brick and ask them for what you want. Anyway, so now that we know that the third category that we're supposed to be concentrating on, again, just to run down, actual international Islamic terrorism, okay, still a problem. 2, narco-terrorists and transnational gangs, a problem, yes, less a counter-terrorist problem usually in our ordinary way of thinking, but they have to say they're targeting somebody that some moderates might say, yeah, that's okay. It might be a good idea to think of narco-traffickers as terrorists, but also it may just be backfill to justify blowing up boats in the Caribbean. But third, we need to be looking out for everybody who doesn't support Donald Trump and tracking them at home and possibly killing them before they kill us, of course. All right, whatever. So, as we said, yes, it promises to map them, the radically pro-transgender, etc., at home, identify their membership, map their ties to international organizations, even if we have to make up those international organizations, and use law enforcement tools to cripple them operationally before they can maim or kill the innocent, which ought to be easy since they're not doing it, and no matter when you neutralize them, you will have beaten that deadline beating the clock on that one. It also promises to do the same with state sponsors of such groups and those governments undertaking lethal plots on U.S. soil or against Americans anywhere. So that's supposed to be, they just borrowed that from the Islamic jihadist part and said, yes, transgender people are essentially Islamic jihadists without the Islam part, which is easy to understand and conceptualize, I'm sure. Okay, time for us to head out on the break. We'll read one more paragraph here, but we're going to return to this and move on from it in a organized fashion, I'm sure. Tom's next paragraph, of course, the Trump administration has always tried to portray Antifa, a loose affiliation of people who dramatically think of themselves as anti-fascist fighters, there's Tom Nichols for you, as a coherent, organized terror threat. Now the White House is saying they are something like a transgender anarchist specter supported by foreign nations. Which ones? They don't list. Hi, it's me, David. I mostly do the commercials around here, too. Have you ever thought you'd like to do a show like this one, but a lot shorter? Maybe without necessarily waking up early each day, or even, let's say, working at it each day? Well, now you can, sort of, and by now, I mean pretty much any time you want, because what I'm talking about is you recording a news story, sharing an essay, or otherwise contributing your thoughts on these crazy times with the rest of us, and with any digital recording device. Make the show your own, as I like to say. Send me a digital file of your recording, a link to any source material, and a note about how you'd like to be identified on the air at KagroX, that's KAGROX, at gmail.com, and I'll take it from there. Don't worry about those ums and ahs either. I sure don't, but I'll even do my best to edit your submission down into a nice-sounding dispatch from the field. So come on, everybody, make the show your own. Help me prove once and for all that I'm not just imagining this audience. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I wanted to continue with Tom Nichols' piece in The Atlantic, even though he does occasionally lapse back into Tom Nichols isms by denigrating even the idea that people might actually be genuinely opposed to fascism. What did he say? You're talking about Antifa and saying that what they were really, despite the Trump administration attempt to try to define them as some highly organized organization, they are, of course, the opposite, and they'll tell you that themselves. But what did he say? He defines it as a loose affiliation of people who dramatically think of themselves as anti-fascist fighters. Some, yes, others not so much, especially as they're broadening the definition of what it is to be anti-fascist. You don't actually have to clash necessarily physically with the state in order to be anti-fascism. Oh, yes. Scott makes a good note here in what should be, I guess, I don't know whether the writers of the report would think of this as the proper understanding of why they include the words maim, the word maim, in stopping the radically pro-transgender from maiming and killing the innocent. It wasn't necessarily, although I think they would probably incorporate this into it. Every time there's like I said, a mass shooting, they try to say, oh, the person was transgender or transgender adjacent or is at least pro-transgender, and that's why they killed everybody. But the maim part is, we're rightly reminded, they believe that transgenderism is a maiming. If there's any sort of transition surgery involved, that would be, in their view, maiming the person, the innocent person who, said, I would like to have this surgery and pursued it, as opposed to, of course, the maiming of the masses of now Mar-a-Lago-faced idiots who are walking around like they've been punched in the face or stung by bees all day long. That's not maiming in any serious sense, I'm sure, but neither is it maiming in any serious sense if someone wants to go through gender reassignment surgery. But, of course, remember again that the President of the United States is convinced, among other things, that stealth planes are invisible. The wall will be built out of transparent materials so that you're not hit in the head with packages of drugs that are thrown over the top, that they're eating cats and dogs in immigrant communities, that, oh gosh, some of the dumber ones are escaping me. Those are not even the dumbest of the dumb ones. But also that boys and girls of kindergarten age are being kidnapped at school, operated on outside of their parents' supervision during the school day, like during circle time. They're having their genders reassigned, and then they're being sent home as a different gender, unbeknownst to their now horrified and befuddled parents. Although certainly some of their parents are welcoming them home as a new gender and saying that it's a fantastic thing, and they love the government doing this to their kids. And then they barbecue a cat, I'm sure, is their view of things. Oh, right. By the way, speaking of cats in school, don't forget that there are litter boxes in every classroom because some kids want to pretend that they're cats, much less that they're, forget being transgender. They're also turning into cats and maybe dogs. And even though dogs don't use litter boxes, it doesn't really matter. Now, why you would choose to identify as a cat or dog when you could be instantly eaten by your neighbors, I have no idea. But I guess that's just their confusion about our weird and wacky ideology. But they really do think, the president keeps saying that kids are going to school one gender and coming home another gender. And I mean, come on. This man is sick and needs to be in memory care. You can't have that guy free on the street, much less President of the United States. But here we are, and here he is in China negotiating with a serious world leader of one of the biggest and most powerful countries in the world, and that might be problematic national security-wise. Anywho, back to what Tom was saying. It goes on and on, he says, until it gets to Iran, which the report calls the greatest threat to the United States emanating from the Middle East. Middle East. I know they had the echo button on for that one. You want to pick a bone about whether or not Iran is Middle Eastern or Central Asian? You could. I don't think it'll get you anywhere. The danger of Iranian terrorism is a reasonable concern. But only a year ago, the administration's 2025 National Security Strategy, I guess it's an annual exercise, should be, it's good. In 2025, the National Security Strategy downplayed the threat from Iran. Of course, we're ending the forever wars and yada yada and whatever. Good eye, by the way. I mean, probably shouldn't you have seen his Iran antagonism exploding into confrontation at some point? They didn't, which means, of course, they've failed miserably in their jobs. These are the guys who are supposed to see the next big national security problem on the horizon and be preparing for it. They're downplaying the threat of Iran. Less than a year later, actual war with Iran. You missed it. No one else did. You did. This change is significant. It's almost as if something extremely dangerous happened over the past few months. What might that have been? Oh, could it be the guy who thinks there's gender reassignment and litter boxes in schools is President of the United States? Could be. The report also notes the real and significant problem of the persecution of Christians in Africa and elsewhere. But even here, a tragedy is draped in the needless overstatement that Christians are, quote, the most persecuted people on earth, unquote. This grim honor could be more accurately applied to various other groups, but it was likely included to please Trump's evangelical base, who are, becoming disillusioned with him slowly but surely anyway. These various digressions have very little to do with terrorism. And although the report calls itself a strategy, it contains almost no strategic recommendations other than to do obvious things, such as identifying, quote, terror actors and plots before they happen. That's when you want to identify them, that's true. Cutting off, quote, their arms, not their actual limbs, but maybe, but cutting off their arms, funding, and recruiting streams, get it? And then destroying them by, quote, taking necessary and specific actions in self-defense to neutralize imminent threats to the United States. You want to do that. That's true. These generic exhortations are not a strategy. A strategy entails specific discussions of priorities and goals, how the instruments and means of national power will be brought to bear on those objectives, and the risks and rewards of various options. Yeah, terrorism bad, me get them first. A good idea, not a strategy. The security analyst Kabir Taneja, and I don't know how it's what language are we in for this surname? Kabir Taneja, Taneja. I'm not certain which. Taneja, and I apologize, Kabir, but the security analyst, known here as Kabir Taneja, let's say, wrote on Twitter that the document, quote, looks like something written by an intern, and that's really what Sebastian Gorka is, even at his age. And Julia Kayyem, remember, told me that the report is so badly done that it, quote, mocks the American public rather than informs it. The terrorism scholar Colin P. Clark posted that, quote, competent career CT, counterterrorism, professionals must be aghast at this slop, and that he, quote, would give this a solid D+ grade. I don't know that I would pass it, but okay. I'm a former professor, Tom says, and I might have given it something a smidge higher, but only if it had come from a clueless undergraduate who was encountering all of the concepts related to terrorism and counterterrorism for the first time. But it didn't. Instead, this jumble was apparently the brainchild of Sebastian Gorka. Yes, that's the guy, and he's the Hungarian. Right, that's the man of whom we speak. Sebastian Gorka. What do we have to say about him? He is, of course, now Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism. In Trump's first term, Gorka was also an assistant to the president, and he lasted all of 7 months in that job, during which he did little besides fend off criticism for his alleged ties to a far-right group in Hungary and fight to gain a security clearance. So remember, the national security guy couldn't get a national security clearance. That's true. And by the way, his lifeline to Hungary has since been defeated in their elections, so he'll have to abscond to some other third country when this regime finally sunsets. I do hope that they are prepared and can apprehend him at the border as he seeks to flee the country, even if I would say you're looking for, I bet the facial tan will give it away. He's going to shave that goatee thing off in an attempt to make it out of the country unrecognized, and you'll just see that pale place around it. It'll look like he ate a fluffernutter maybe and got the marshmallow all over his face. So be on the lookout for that. I sure hope they can nab that guy. Anyway, as I was saying, in Trump's first term, he was also an assistant to the president. Didn't last, couldn't get even a security clearance. Now in charge of drafting one of our security strategies. After he was forced out in the first term, Gorka took up, serious studies like this one, podcasting, and continued to appear on television and hawked fish oil pills. Now that Trump has returned without adult gatekeepers in the White House, Gorka is back, and his involvement in this document explains a lot. Gorka has no real experience in national security. His reputation in the MAGA movement rests on his devotion to Trump, of course, and his ostensible expertise as a scholar of terrorism and counterterrorism. Problem with that, of course. Not that there's anything wrong with academic expertise as the foundation for policy. I'm a big supporter of that idea. But Gorka isn't much of a scholar. Other experts have noted that Gorka's academic work is, to put it gently, and I don't see why we should do that, but he does, subpar, including his 2008 PhD from an undistinguished Hungarian university and his later paucity of scholarly publications. Like, okay, not everybody gets to go to a distinguished university, although usually when you're pursuing a PhD, it's usually only the relatively distinguished universities that are even issuing those degrees in the first place. Generally, I don't know, maybe not, but he didn't. But okay, what about you went there for reasons that we don't have to necessarily go into, but you're an academic star. You rise to the level that you're noticed by the President of the United States and brought on board as a counterterrorism strategist. What has qualified you in the interim? Your publications are usually what does it. But hey, Gorka has none. Or the relative paucity, we'll say, of his scholarly publications. Gorka has always brushed away such criticisms. And the quote here is, "What I care about is if somebody in the field is reading my article," except you haven't written any, so they're not. He told the Washington Post in 2017, before being tossed out on his ear because he sucked in the first administration, "I see myself as somebody who supports the bravest of the brave, the war fighter. Publish or be damned." That's not it. It's usually publish or perish. But publish or be damned, I'll be damned, thank you very much. And why did he change that? It's because if he said publish or perish, I'll perish, thank you very much, everybody would have said, we are finally in agreement. Part of serving the bravest included a stint at Marine Corps University, where he was hired, according to the Post profile, not as a government employee like other faculty, but as a chair funded by Thomas Saunders III, a major Republican Party donor. So yes, he taught at Marine Corps University. Why? Because they wanted him and hired him and used their money to do it? To put their money where their mouth was? No, because somebody said, "Will you take this kid as an intern if I pay you?" Yes, I will. Once he was at MCU, the Post report noted, enthusiastic officers eagerly packed Gorka's lectures, even as many faculty members took a dim view of his work. Much like the shallow report he's now produced, Gorka's teaching about terrorism, a former military faculty member told the Post, made a difficult and complex situation simple and confirmed the officers' prejudices and assumptions. So that's why it was popular. Another professor added, the guy he was on Fox News is the guy he was here. Bombastic and a showman. And by the way, the show sucks, I would add. Gorka has taken some criticism for calling himself doctor. Nichols says, I have no objection to that, although most of us with doctorates do not insist on the title. The more substantive issue, however, is that Gorka claims to be an expert on jihadism and terror in the Middle East, despite the fact that he speaks none of the languages of the region and, until recently, had never even spent time in the area. I read the newspaper and I'm scared of Islamic terrorism, so now I'm an expert. He is, like so many in the Trump administration, a mediocrity who holds a job for which he is not qualified solely because of his connection to the president. In any number of policy areas, appointing someone like Gorka might be merely an annoying waste of taxpayer money. In national security, however, allowing an unprepared non-expert to handle counterterrorism strategy and advise the President of the United States in the middle of a war with Iran, no less, represents an especially serious risk. It is possible that Gorka's, quote, strategy is meaningless and that his advice never reaches the Resolute desk. That'd be all right. Trump clearly likes Gorka, but less clear is whether Gorka is part of the small and informal circle that surrounds the president. In any case, every administration churns out its share of bumf. I don't think I am familiar with the word, but it sounds descriptive in a way I can believe in. BUMF. Okay. Some reports, such as the National Security Strategy, though, are required by law. When I was in the Naval War College, professors had to teach these documents and the process that creates them to our students. If they were successful students, they would be involved in creation process. Not all of them are of equal importance, but they usually manage to explain a president's goals and priorities to Congress, to the American people, and in some cases to the world. The 2026 Trump Counterterrorism Strategy fails even at this basic task of communication, which raises the question of why this undercooked report was released at all. This is why this came to mind. Like the autopsy reports, why are you releasing it if it's just not informative or useful? Or maybe that's the reason why they didn't release the autopsy, but in this case, they knew they had the same problem, possibly, but they released it anyway. Why did they do that? As it turns out, Gorka may have been goaded into it by a journalist. Last month, the ProPublica reporter Hannah Allam wrote a story titled "The Counterterrorism Czar Without a Counterterrorism Plan," in which she noted that Gorka had repeatedly promised a strategy without delivering one. That sounds familiar. Nearly a year ago, she wrote, Gorka declared that the report was imminent. Gorka, she added, said last summer that he was, quote, on the cusp of unveiling the plan, a phrase he repeated 3 months later in October. That's not a cusp. And again in January. So as between the summer and all the way into January, he's always on the cusp of releasing it. When Allam reached out to Gorka for comment, Gorka refused and instead posted on Twitter that Allam was an, quote, anti-American hack, and that she should go ahead and write her putrid piece of hackery. On May 4th, Allam noted in a follow-up article that exactly 2 months into the Iran war, Gorka's counterterrorism strategy has yet to appear. 2 days later, the White House finally issued the document. Wow. The poor quality of this putative strategy is a reminder of what happens when unserious people are asked to undertake a serious job. The United States always needs experienced national security officials, especially in the field of counterterrorism. During a war with a fanatical Islamic regime, normally these professionals formulate policy by meeting and cooperating in a complex interagency process that includes the National Security Council, the various agencies of the intelligence community, the Defense Department, and the FBI. Not a great lineup right now, for putting together serious work, right? Gorka, however, is not only unqualified in the subject, but apparently is also winging the process, which, how much damage can it do when the process normally would include the Defense Department? The War Department. Pete Hegseth, drunk-ass Whiskey Pete's War Department, and drunk-ass Kash Patel's FBI. That's not going to help. Oh, don't forget Tulsi Gabbard, who may not be a drunk-ass, as far as I know, but maybe she is, and I just don't know it. She's hiding it well. Anyway, Gorka, unqualified in the subject, winging the process. The National Security Council is moribund. Its director, Lil Marco Rubio, is busy also being the Secretary of State. And both DOD and the FBI are led by immature men who are far out of their depth, one of whom, as my Atlantic colleague Sarah Fitzpatrick reported last week, even uses a bottle of bourbon as his calling card. Meanwhile, Iran has just survived 2 months of a military onslaught. And by the way, I'm not certain which one of them uses the bottle of bourbon. Anyway, the CIA reports that the regime in Tehran continues to maintain substantial capabilities and, more important, is nowhere near close to collapse. That, too, another major theme over the last day or two of the reporting. Wouldn't you know it, independent reporting says, Iran's missile capabilities haven't been decimated. They actually retain quite a significant missile capability, despite the fact that we have decimated, destroyed it, and left them with nothing 5 times, 6 times now. At a time like this, Gorka's counterterrorism strategy is worse than useless. It is dangerous. Its simplistic formulations loudly signal the Trump administration's incompetence to the entire world. Foreign adversaries, maybe China, unlikely to be intimidated. Instead, they might even take some pleasure in knowing that the American government thinks drug dealers, transgender activists, and a bunch of street goons, calling themselves Antifa, come on now, are as much a threat as transnational terror organizations and their state sponsors. This is a real blind spot for Tom Nichols, for whatever reason. And when I say a real blind spot, and not just that he, is predisposed to think of anybody who might think of themselves as anti-fascist as having some delusions of grandeur, but I think he's also missing the breadth of the American public that would happily count themselves as being anti-fascist, including the graying moms and dads and grandpas and grandmas who show up for No Kings protests. And I'm sure he would give them a pass on that stuff and say, that's not the kind of people I'm talking about who identify themselves as Antifa. But that doesn't matter, because under this national security strategy document, and even without it, it's been the aim of the Trump administration to label those people that even Tom Nichols would say aren't really, in my view, Antifa, as Antifa, and be able to use this as a tool to arrest them and or otherwise harass them. Anyway, we should actually point that out, I think. A document that should have explained the president's plan to keep the American people safe during wartime is now on global display as a pathetic and dangerous joke. More than anything, it is a faithful reflection of the Trump administration itself. To judge from this report, America's counterterrorism policy is unfocused, run by amateurs, and concerned more with Donald Trump's many grievances than the security of the United States. Troublesome, problematic, to be sure. Plus, we got a little extra time to set out some differences with the way Tom Nichols approaches analysis, even though, generally speaking, in the main, I think he's right about this report. Not necessarily your greatest guide for what is it to be anti-fascist. Does it mean you are Antifa? And even if you actually identify yourself that way, are you what he says you are? Probably not. But, like I said, sort of beside the point. Now, something else I wanted to bring to your attention, and I'm going to have to go searching for this. By the way, a million things I wanted to bring to your attention. But I think what I wanted to do next, where can I even find it? Something of great interest about what our America's stature in the world. Is this it? I think it may have been. But let me make sure. There's no way for me to make sure. I'm just going to have to dive in at this point. But this is, I think there's a broader theme of America just sort of being written out of the picture in a number of ways. And I think here militarily and internationally and global alliances, the end of NATO, etc. This is in Medium, where Owen Warner, with whom I'm not particularly familiar, but generally speaking, I guess an economics and finance writer, but geopolitics as well. Denmark just brought Putin's worst nightmare to life. That's what we're supposed to do, of course, as the United States of America, but we weren't doing it. So someone else took it up, and it was Denmark. And Denmark has reason to want to do this, of course, and only made worse by our antagonizing them. Anyway, the biggest trick the Nordic states ever played, the article begins, was to make the world believe that they were just helpers of Ukraine. They are, in fact, the architects of a new form of sovereignty. I don't know if they would say that or not, but this is interesting to recognize. We are witnessing the end of the donation era and the birth of venture warfare. What might that mean? Well, we'll probably be examining it more tomorrow, since there isn't much time to read this. But for 2 years, we treated military aid like a garage sale. I think he means the Danish, actually, giving away what we no longer needed. That has been brought to an end, or maybe the United States. That has been brought to an end by the Danish model. Okay, there we are. It is the cold, calculating judgment that $1 used in a basement workshop in Kyiv is deadlier than $10 spent in a boardroom in Munich. The most fantastic aspect of this story is that there is a legal alchemy of how this tale was written. I'm not even certain what that actually means. Usually, whenever a country buys or transfers arms, there is a clear paper trail of permission. If Sweden sends a CV-90, Stockholm retains a say in how and where it is used. Control follows the weapon is followed by control. However, this is where the twist comes in. We may have to look at this in Instapaper here, just to get one more paragraph in. By funding Ukrainian factories to build Ukrainian designs like I will skip trying to pronounce the name of the long-range drone that they've developed. Denmark and Sweden are executing what can only be described as a strategic disconnect. They provide the blood, which is money, but take no responsibility for the bite, which is the strike. That is something of a new and interesting approach and a new model for all of this. I may want, in fact, off the air today to create an account to read the full story, but it should also be read alongside another piece that I, again, won't have time for, but I want to give you something to think about as we exit. The AP story from a couple of days ago, and I'll see if I can find it, but if not, I will blurt it out myself. Here's the headline. Ukrainian drone pilots turn a military exercise in Sweden, you remember them, into a critical warning for NATO. Long story short on that one, NATO exercises going on under Swedish leadership and in Sweden, in Gotland maybe, Sweden, have invited somehow, officially, unofficially, Ukrainians who are not members of NATO to participate in the games and basically show us what you got, Ukraine. You're the ones on the front line fighting the Russians. That's what we're supposed to be preparing to do. Why don't you put what you've got up against what we've got? And guess what? Ukrainian drone attacks decimated all NATO forces within minutes and left them wondering what the hell happened. They ran it over and over and over again.
You have been
Same result.
To Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
So I still got to get this on the record, even though I should be introducing justices programs. But basically, they learned how to wipe out NATO forces instantly and at very low cost. And basically now the reaction in Sweden among the public, you know what? Let's replace the United States with Ukraine in NATO. Maybe that would be more worth our while.